Hello and good afternoon everyone. This is John Eugene Condino of group number 3. In this video, we're going to help you understand bar graph and give you all the exact information and knowledge about this particular topic. They provide you learning at the same time entertainment. So, have fun and listen carefully because throughout the presentation, we will make sure to broaden your knowledge and understanding about the bar graph. Learning objectives. At the end of this video, the students are expected: first, to define bar graph; second, to identify the different types of bar graph; third, to learn the steps in solving problems and constructing bar graph; fourth, to appreciate the purpose and importance of bar graph; and last, to be able to apply bar graph in real life situation.
So, before we proceed to the discussion, we should first know the guidelines in learning about the bar graph. So, our table of contents is comprised of description, definition of terms, steps and procedure, sample problems, solution, interpretation of the answer, conclusion, generalization, and last is the references. And now, let's go deeper about the bar graph.
And now, let us talk about the parts of a bar graph. First is the title. The title offers a short explanation of what is in your graph. This helps the reader identify what they are about to look at. It can be creative or simple as long as it tells what's in the graph. Next is the axes or the labels. There are two axes present on the graph: the y-axis or the vertical axis and the x-axis or the horizontal axis. The y-axis is used to represent the numerical values, whereas the x-axis represents the categorical data against which numerical data is plotted. Next is the bars. The bars are the rectangles drawn on the bar charts. The bar displays the number of items under particular categories. Next is the categories. The categories tells the specific type of data. Next is the skills. The skill is the number that shows the units used on the bar graph. And lastly is the key or the legends. It explains any additional information included in the graph. Many times this will show different colors or symbols used to represent different categories. It is needed only when data about more than category are shown in a graph.
Steps on how to make and use a bar graph. Step 1. The first step in drawing any graph is to collect data. Since the bar graph is comparative study, make sure you collect data for all the categories. Step 2. In any graph, there are two axes. Draw the x-axis and the y-axis. Step 3. Label the x-axis. First, label the x-axis and the x-axis. We represent the categories. For example, we label the names of chocolates, i.e. A, B, C on the x-axis.
Step 4. Next is to label the y-axis. To do this, take the highest frequency and plot the points on the y-axis accordingly. Step 5. Finally, we have draw the bars. In general, the bars are not connected or continuous. Now, extend the bar from the base value to the corresponding frequency. And if the value falls between the plotted frequencies, take an approximate point between the two. Step 6. Once the bar graph is complete, we can interpret it. We can find out the most and least preferred choices. We can also identify the outliers.
A bar graph is a type of graph that represents categorical data with rectangular bars, where the length or height of each bar represents the frequency, proportion, or percentage of the category being measured. The bars can be arranged horizontally or vertically, with the height or length of each bar representing the value of the data being measured. Bar graphs are often used to compare data between different categories or to track changes over time. They are particularly effective in showing data with discrete categories or groups, as the bars can be easily distinguished from one another and make it easy to identify patterns or trends. Typically, The x-axis of the bar graph represents the categories being measured, while the y-axis represents the value or frequency of the data. Each bar in the graph represents one category, and its height or length corresponds to the value of the data for that category. The bars can be colored or patterned to differentiate them from one another or to highlight certain data points. Overall, bar graphs are a useful way to visualize data and make it easier to understand and analyze information. Here are the kinds of bar graphs. First is the vertical bar graph. A vertical bar graph, also known as a column graph, is the most common type of bar graph. It shows data with vertical bars of equal width, with the height of each bar representing the value of the data it represents. The second one is the horizontal bar graph. A horizontal bar graph, also known as a bar chart, is a type of bar graph that uses horizontal bars to represent the data. The length of each bar represents the value of the data it represents. The third one is a stacked bar graph. A stacked bar graph is a bar graph that shows how the data is divided into different categories. The bars are divided into segments, with each segment representing a different category of the data. The height of each segment with a bar represents the value of the data it represents, and the height of the bar represents the total value of all the segments combined. The last one is a group bar graph. A group bar graph is a type of bar graph that compares data across different groups or categories. The bars are grouped together by category, and each group of bars represents a different category of data. The height of each bar within the group represents the value of the data it represents.
For sample problem 1, Nurse Jada conducted a 10-item quiz on her students. She decided to check the paper to see which particular topic needs to be discussed again based on the number of students that made a mistake in each number. Out of 50 students, 20 students were wrong in number 1, 31 in number 2, 14 in number 3, 22 in number 4, 34 in number 5, 10 in number 6, 9 in number 7, 46 in number 8, 27 in number 9, and 0 in number 10. Question number 1. Based on the given problem, create a bar graph. Question number 2. What number has the most number of mistakes and should be discussed again? Question number 3. What number has the least number of mistakes and indicates that the students really understand the topic?
So, the bar graph for problem 1 should look like this. It should consist of the title, the x and y axis, and the labels for each axis. The title for the bar graph in problem 1 is number of students that is mistaken in each item number. So, the labels are item number and the number of students. So, for question number 2, the number that has the most amount of students that is mistaken is number 8, which has 46 students. For question number 3, the number that has the least amount of students that is mistaken is number 10, with 0 students.
The next part of the presentation is the interpretation or answer. For the sample problem number 1, the problem describes a scenario in which a nurse named Jada conducted a 10-item quiz on her students, and she wants to identify the topic that needs to be discussed again based on the number of students who made a mistake in each item. Jada recorded the number of students who made a mistake in each item, and there were a total of 50 students in the class. Question number 1, which is to make a graph from the sample problem. In order to visualize the data, we can create a bar graph where the x-axis represents the numbers of the quiz items, and the y-axis represents the number of students who made a mistake in each item. The height of each bar represents the number of students who made a mistake in that particular item. Then for the question number 2, which asks what number has the most number of mistakes and should be discussed again, based on the bar graph, we can see that number 8 has the highest number of mistakes, with 46 out of 50 students making a mistake. Therefore, these items needs to be discussed again with the students. On the other hand, for the question number 3, which asks for the number that has the least number of mistakes, based from the graph, number 10 has the least number of mistakes, with no student having a mistake. This indicates that the students understand this topic well. In summary, the bar graph helps us visualize the data and identify the quiz item that needs to be reviewed again with the students, which is the number 8, and the item that the students understand well, which is the number 10.
Good day everyone, my name is Micaela Jane Aguilar. I am from Group 3 and I will introduce to you the sample problem number 2. So Nurse CC is working on weekdays from Monday to Friday. Her shift every Monday, Wednesday and Friday starts at 6 a.m. until 2 p.m. On Tuesday and Thursday, she starts working at 12 noon until 9 p.m. Last week, she took 1 hour overtime duties on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. Nurse Cici was really happy to spend the rest of the week to herself after a very busy week. So the questions are, number 1, based on the problem, create a bar graph. And number 2, what is the most busy day of Nurse Cici last week? And lastly, number 3, how many hours did Nurse Cici spend in the hospital last week?
The problem describes the work schedule of Nurse Cici, who works Monday to Friday. Her schedule varies throughout the week with different start and end times on different days. Additionally, she worked 1 hour overtime duties on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. The problem asks us to create a bar graph and answer questions related to Nurse Cici's work schedule. To create a bar graph, we can use the days of the week or work days on the x-axis and the number of hours worked on the y-axis. Based on the bar graph, we can see that Tuesday was the busiest day for Nurse Cici, as she worked 9 hours and a 1 hour overtime duty, making it a total of 10 hours. On the other days, she worked for 8 hours except for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, where she had a 1 hour of overtime duty. To calculate the total number of hours Nurse Cici spent in the hospital last week, we can add up the hours she worked each day. Therefore, Nurse Cici spent a total of 45 hours in the hospital last week, 8 hours on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and 9 hours on Tuesday and Thursday. In summary, the bar graph helps us visualize Nurse Cici's work schedule and identify the busiest day, while the total number of hours worked can be calculated by adding up the hours she worked each day.
For the sample problem number 2, the problem describes the work schedule of Nurse Cici, who works from Monday to Friday. Her schedule varies throughout the week, with different start and end times on different days. Additionally, she worked 1 hour overtime duties on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. The problem asks us to create a bar graph and answer questions related to Nurse Cici's work schedule. The question number 1, which is to create a bar graph, we can use the days of the week or work days on the x-axis and the number of hours worked on the y-axis. For question number 2, which asks for the most busy day or days of Nurse Cici last week, based on the bar graph, we can see that Tuesday was the busiest day of Nurse Cici, as she worked 9 hours and had 1 hour overtime duty, making it a total of 10 hours. On the other days, she worked for 8 hours except for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, where she had a 1 hour overtime duty. Question number 3, which asks for how much hours did Nurse Cici spend in the hospital last week. In order to calculate the total number of hours, we can add up the hours she worked each day. Therefore, Nurse Cici spent a total of 45 hours in the hospital last week, 8 hours on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and 9 hours on Tuesday and Thursday. In summary, the bar graph helped us visualize Nurse Cici's work schedule and identify the busiest day, while the total number of hours worked can be calculated by adding up the hours she worked each day.
Before we end our discussion, let us first have a quick recap on what was discussed. A bar graph can be a very useful business tool that helps deliver complicated data and concepts in a way that's easy to understand. A bar graph is a graphical representation of precise data using rectangular bars with equal gaps between them. The overall relationship of the data is illustrated using the y-axis or the values and x-axis or the categories. There are four main types of bar graph: the vertical bar graph, the horizontal bar graph, stacked bar graph, and group bar graph. Bar graphs are very helpful in representing dense information at a glance and allow one to observe trends easily. Advantages of using bar graph. First, show each data category in a frequency distribution. Next, it displays relative numbers or proportions of multiple categories. Third, it summarizes a large data set in a visual and easily interpretable form. It makes trends easier to highlight than tables do. Its estimates can be made quickly and accurately. Next, the most widely used method of data representation is bar graph. Therefore, it is used by various industries. It is also accessible to a wide audience. And lastly, it can easily compare 2 or 3 datasets. Therefore, a bar graph can be of great use when you have to explain the meaning of complex data. It allows you to compare different sets of data among different groups easily. It instantly demonstrates this relationship using two axes, where the categories are on one axis and the various values are on the other. A bar graph can also illustrate important changes in data throughout a period of time. They are popular because they allow the reader to recognize patterns or trends far more easily than looking at a table of numerical data.
So, that is all for our group presentation. Thanks for watching. We hope that you enjoyed learning about bar graphs and how they can be used to visually represent data. So, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more informative videos. And if you have any questions or suggestions for future topics, let us know in the comment section below. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a great day and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.